So welcome back to my channel. This is Gamer Dom and a slightly delayed rambles of a fool from me, mainly because I've picked up on the Italian premium medium tank being the test server, and I wanted to bring you that as a matter of urgency. So this rambles has gone out slightly later in the day, but still full of good stuff, I think you'll agree. So main stuff to talk about this week is around the output from a community Q&A session in Russia with some of the developers. Some really interesting things around all sorts of things like matchmaking, preferential matchmaking, tanks, gold, ammunition, changes to crew skills, all sorts of really good stuff. So I'm going to try and without going on forever about them, because the video could run to 2 hours if I covered every point that was raised. So I've just picked out on a few things that I think are really interesting, and hopefully you do too. Looking at some of the stuff coming through March, and lots of other good stuff besides. So without further ado, let's get going. So first up, let's take a look at some of the stuff that came out of this developers Q&A in Russia. Some really interesting stuff, and I can't hope to go through it all because it's just masses of it. But just some of the highlights from my perspective, and I urge you to go and read. Actually, the Daily Bounce seems to have the best coverage of this Q&A session. So I'm going to start with the things that interest me most, and you know, if there's more there that you want to go or I miss something, just let me know in the comments down below. So the big banner item in many ways, which hasn't actually been that much attention, I don't think, is the fact that Wargaming said that after 1.0 they will be changing gold rounds. So they're still not entirely sure what that will be, how they'll change them, but the one thing is for certain that not at 1.0 but shortly afterwards, one of the patches after 1.0, they will remove the ability to buy gold rounds, so premium rounds for gold. So you will only be able to buy it with silver or the credits from now on, after this update comes in. So it's not the 1.0, but some point after that. That's what they're saying. Now, why are they doing that? Well, they want to make sure that people run out of gold that they've bought, premium ammunition that they've paid for with gold, because that's paying for with money, and that puts them in all kinds of problems with legal situations in various countries around the world, which is kind of why they don't meddle generally with premium tanks, to make them worse anyway, because of the legal ramifications that you've bought something and then they're changing it. So they don't tend to go there, and that's the same with the premium ammunition. So their hope is that by removing the ability to buy gold, it will start to, people who have bought it with gold will start to use up their stock, so to speak, and then they can start to actually change the gold ammunition, or the premium ammunition, as we'll have to call it at that stage. So there's three basic scenarios that they're going to look at, and they're going to test them in the sandbox, so this could be interesting. First one is that they remove the concept of premium ammunition altogether. So the idea that there would be sort of specialist ammunition, so that certain ammunition would have more penetration and do less damage, or more penetration, do less damage. Some ammunition might do more damage but less penetration, and so forth. Also, they might fly faster, so when you're firing at range you might want to swap to APCR because that is a faster round, etc, etc. So the idea is that there would be sort of a use scenario for the specific ammunition, and that's kind of much more in tune with how the reality is of these rounds were used and are used today, is that you don't, when you're in a Abrahams, you don't spam one particular shell. The skill of the loader and the gunner and the commander is to select the right and most appropriate shell for the given situation, and that seems to be what this first scenario is pushing for. The second one is to basically make premium ammunition only available for gold, so get rid of the credit option so you can only buy it for gold. Apparently Wargaming don't like this, and pretty much that idea is out. So realistically, from 3 ideas we're down to 2. The third idea is to change the whole economics of shooting, so changing all the prices. So that at the moment a premium shell has a premium price attached to it, so you pay a certain amount extra to use it, and the sort of measurement criteria is, you know, do you make enough damage with that extra shell to sort of even it out, so that, you know, you cost more but you do more. Therefore, if you have a good game and you've spammed gold all the time, you kind of come out reasonably okay out of it. So they're looking at how they change that ratio. So it's, you know, it could be that certain shell types generate much more cash than others, as they do kind of now, and I'm not really sure how this one changes. So what would be interesting if they did head this kind of route is, what does that mean for some of the premium tanks that are particularly good at credit generation and, you know, only operate with effectively with premium rounds, the Valentine, premium Valentine, the premium what's the other one I featured, Excelsior, featured on the channel the other day. Those sort of tanks are absolutely terrible with standard ammunition, and you fire premium because that's the only way you can get any kind of damage, any kind of penetration. So as a result, they have their shells are a little bit cheaper. So there's a lot of shenanigans that could go on here, but I'm heartened that they are looking at gold shells and they're looking at premium shells. I like the idea of different shells having different uses and different abilities. If I remember, I haven't played Armoured Warfare for a long time, but from what I remember, that it was a similar kind of scenario there, in that if you were firing at tanks with reactive armor, you were better off swapping to a particular type of ammunition, or you did less damage, less penetration. And so it was about being clever about how you set your tank up and how you played your game. Now that'll exclude 90% of the player base of World of Tanks, clearly, because nobody's no, I'm being cruel, but it could be interesting, and I think that's I'm heartened they're looking at it. I can't help thinking that the easiest thing to have done, which would have solved an awful lot of the problems with this whole premium ammunition, would be to stop you being able to buy it with gold, and limiting the amount of gold shells you're allowed on your tank to, say, 10% of your total loadout. Then, you know, problem solved, really. But what will also be interesting is we've seen an escalation in armor values of a lot of heavy tanks, given the you know, the amount of gold that's been fired in games. And, you know, if you're then going to stop that happening, what does that mean to all those armor values? Do they start nerfing them all again? So it's a big, they've opened a whole can of worms by making gold ammunition so freely available and so cheap to get. But now to remove it could be even more complicated than to just leave it in the game. I never thought I'd say those words. Anyway, let me know what you think down below. So another topic they looked at was vehicle rebalancing and game balancing. So we know there's been a lot of changes to tech trees recently. The Death Star, the Foch, etc., etc., have been removed from the game, or at least from the tech trees anyway, and changes to the Russian heavy tank tree for the IS-7, etc., etc. Now they're saying that they're not planning to do any more. What they're working on now, or worked on now, is pretty much done. So they're now going to start looking at lower tier balancing, I guess, rebalancing. They're trying to give us a bit of notice, so 1 to 2 months is what they're saying in terms of warning us when things are going to happen, because they want to give us time to respond, to deal with it, to, you know, open up new tech trees if that's what you want to do. What's also interesting is that they're talking about the fact that there is a sort of inverted pyramid of usage at the moment, that there are far more higher tier tanks out there in the game than lower tier, which I found kind of interesting. Also slightly concerning, because that tends to suggest that these are more experienced players who've been playing for a while, and therefore newer players aren't sticking around. So yeah, so they need to do something with the middle tiers. They need to improve them, get them worked through. As always in these things, there's always questions about particular tanks. One of the things that seem to grind people is the T-67, the Tier 5 American tank destroyer, the little whippet thing that runs around and shoots everything to pieces. and the E25, and people are asking whether they're going to be nerfed. They're saying the T67 is not going to be nerfed. It's basically as it is. And I think that's fair enough. With the old matchmaking, it was a demon. I think with the new matchmaking, it doesn't kind of come out so well. Still a good little tank though. E25, they are looking at all the preferential matchmaking tanks at the moment. We'll get onto this in a second, but yeah, so E25 could be something they're looking at. But basically what they're saying is they don't want to make panic decisions based on things. There's also, as usual, talk about the changes to the Type 5 Heavy, and again they've stressed that statistically it does okay. It's perfectly where it should be. So good. You keep telling people where to stick it, Wargaming. I love my Type 5 Heavy. What about changes to the IS-4 line? As we know, that line is a little bit lackluster, to say the least. They're looking at them, basically, is what they're saying. So, and it's Russian, so I'm sure they probably will do. So that's that. On matchmaking, they're looking at a system where well, the question was, can you introduce a system where if you're top tier in one game, if you're bottom tier in one game, the next game you're top tier, so you're not constantly sitting at bottom tier all the time. And they're saying that actually that's just not feasible because it would make queue times too long. They're also talking about limiting the number of light tanks in each game, which again I think is important. But again, one of the things you have to be concerned about is if you've only got 2 light tanks and yours are pretty poor, and the enemy team have got 2 good ones, and you get one of the wide open maps, you are screwed, because a good scout player can be worth its weight in gold. So got to be careful about that. Yeah, here we go. There's at the moment it's like a reverse pyramid. There's more higher tiers than lower tiers. To have 3 tier 8s as top tier, it's required to get twice as many tier 6s for each battle, and there aren't that many tier 6s at the moment. So there's your problem with the matchmaking. That in its nutshell is why we constantly get tier 9 and tier 10 battles in a tier 8 tank, is there just aren't enough tier 6s in the stack. And that's really because we're not getting enough new players coming through, frankly. And also I guess tier 6s don't really want to be playing against tier 8s all the time. So yeah, interesting. So lots of considerations here. I won't go into the ranked battles, but there's changes afoot with ranked battles as well. So next up, the thorn in the side of Wargaming at the moment, really, apart from gold ammunition, is what to do about preferential matchmaking premium tanks. So for the players who haven't been in the game that long and aren't really aware of this, it used to be the scenario that all premium tanks were slightly worse than their equivalent in the tech tree. So if you picked up a tier 8 heavy tank like this one, the KV5, it was worse statistically than any other tier 8 in the game. And that was fine because matchmaking was different, and it made up for it in terms of extra credit generation, extra crew experience for your crews, and they also balanced a lot of these tanks with preferential matchmaking. So instead of seeing potentially 2 tiers higher, you'd only see 1 tier higher. And I say that was absolutely fine when it was within the old system, but within the new system, more often than not, if you take a KV5 out, you may end up top tier, but you'll be in a tier in a game with all tier 8s. And this thing is probably a 7.5. It's not really a tier 8 tank because of that old process. So nowadays they bring out premium tanks that are at least as good, and in most cases better, than you get in the tech tree. And actually I would argue that you're paying good money for them. Why shouldn't you get a decent tank? So why should you get it nerfed just because you've put your hands in your pocket? But anyway, that's by the by. But it does mean there's a whole load of legacy preferential matchmaking tanks in the game that are not being used, and in some cases still being sold. The i6 is a preferential matchmaking tank, and it's still being sold. So they've got to do something about this, and it does screw up their matchmaking system. It makes players very, very unhappy because they've spent real money on these tanks and they can't use them because they're just unplayable at the moment. I haven't used my KV5 for months. So they've talked about this before. They're going to be starting to look at a couple of solutions for preferential matchmaking tanks, and they're going to model it on the KV5, the Russian tier 8 super heavy tank. Well, it used to be super heavy, not anymore. And what they can do with it. So a couple of things they're looking about. And they're going to run them in the sandbox again to see what works best. One of the easiest things to do is basically to buff the KV5, which is to everyone knows the which you might not know if you haven't played many KV5s anymore, and have come against them because they don't go out very often anymore. They're notorious. They have very good armor. Well, they did have very good armor before all the upgunning. But they're the radio operator, the pods, these things here, call it the R2D2, they are a weak spot on it. So when you come up against one of these KV5s, or used to and it was top tier, you just shot these things. And like this thing is masses of armor all the way around the front here. The turret is huge armor, but these R2D2s were very, very thinly armored, and that's how you did it. You just shot them. And that was again part of the old process of premiums, in that they balanced them out so that yes, they had superb armor, and if you knew what you're doing, you could bounce an awful lot of damage in it. I did both in fact I did all of my heavy tank 15 missions for the first 3 personal missions using a KV5, which all involved bouncing lots of damage. And you could do that in a KV5. People who then got wise and people knew how to deal with them would shoot you in the cupola, but most people didn't know that, and so you could get away with it. Of course, now with the increased penetration of tanks at tier 8, you know, they just go through you like a knife through butter, so it kind of kills it. So one thing is to buff the KV5, make it better to play, so it's got better armor, remove some of the weak spots, remove some of its weaker armor, etc, etc. It's already had a bit of a gun buff, so that's a realistic possibility, but that kind of won't work with everything. So the mutant that they said would never be sold, but then they sold again over Christmas, was a fantastic tank in the old matchmaking. Now it's pretty horrible. The IS-6, at least it's got a bit of mobility, but really it's woeful in this new matchmaking. So they're going to have to change it. So they don't really want to buff lots of premium vehicles, because the problem with that is if they get it wrong and they over buff it, then people complain and they get in all kinds of trouble if they then have to tone them back down again. So what they're thinking about is some degree of buffing. Alternatively, that they will offer compensation for the owners of the preferential matchmaking tanks, and they say fair compensation. We'll believe that when we see it. So basically you'll get something back for your preferential matchmaking tank. Now, it could be exchanged for another premium tank. It could be that it is well, they're not saying whether it be gold or silver. You can guarantee it won't be money though, which is frustrating because we paid real money for these tanks. So anyway, they're going to be looking at them. That's the 2 scenarios: buff them, remove them, seem to be the 2 routes they're going. And if they remove them or they do anything to them, then there'll be an option for players to either keep their tank in whatever new format it is, or to sell it, trade it in for another tank, or for probably some sort of gold compensation. Not really sure, but whatever happens, they are planning to completely remove preferential matchmaking from the game, so it will no longer be a thing. Simple as that. It'll take some time, but that's the plan. Now this is only the tier 8s. They're not talking yet about the lower tiers with preferentials, because that will be looked at differently, and I don't think that's quite so much of an issue right now, although it probably is also screwing up their matchmaking considerably. But this is primarily the tier 8s, and they're starting with the KV5s. Interesting. So another thing they're looking at is crew skills and perks. So the challenge with the crew skills and perks are obviously what you get once you've got to 100% in terms of crew experience. You can then get these extra skills on top, and the problem is that there aren't actually many that are worth going for. There's quite a few options there, but most often it's only probably about 3 or 4 that you would actually bother going for, because the rest of them are just worthless, completely worthless. Originally they were talking about increasing the numbers by huge amounts, so there'd be all kinds of possible special perks and things that crew might get. Now they're not so sure about that, but again, it's a bit of a minefield, because what do you do with all these crews? So people have invested a lot of time, and in some cases money, in their crews. It's the secret to having a really good tank is, well, it's not really a secret, it's the way to have a really good tank in this game, is to put a really good crew in it. If you've got a dedicated crew that has a lot of crew skills and perks on top of its basic ability, it will be considerably better than others that don't have that. And I was playing the other day in a 50% tank for the first time in a long time, and I was just gobsmacked how terrible it was. And you know, there are players, particularly newer players, who are driving around in those kind of tanks, and it is tough. And then again, there are players who are driving around with crews with 5, 6, 7 crew skills and perks on top of their 100% crew, and they make them so much better. It's one of the things that pisses me off a lot with a lot of contributor content. You'll often see them go on to the test server, or they'll get a chance to test out a brand new premium tank on a press account, and they'll max out the skills. So you look at their skills on their crews, and they've got like 6 or 7 crew skills on it. You know that will make any, so you've got a unicorn player playing with a crew that's just like gods. Surprise, surprise, they're going to do really well in it. I'd much rather, when I look at these tanks, I tend to just put in a crew that would be sort of how I would expect to have my crew when I get there. So if it's a tier 10, I'll probably have 2 crew skills on the crew, because that's typically, I might have 3 or 4, but I have a minimum of 2 crew skills, so that's a realistic assessment. And anyway, my hobby horse. But so anyway, they're looking at crew skills, but they're cognizant that they don't want to hurt players who have invested a lot of time in their crews already. So it's going to be a really difficult balance. How do you work out a way that improves the ability, gives options to players with crew skills, but doesn't just say, okay, oh, you've spent the last 3 years building up this crew, we're now just going to strip them away and they're just worthless. That just would be unfair to the players who've worked hard at it. So that's going to be looked at. One of the things they have talked about is a bit like, I think, in Blitz, all crews come with 6th Sense automatically. Again, I think that's a good thing, particularly for newer players. I think having 6th Sense on your tank undoubtedly helps your ability to play, particularly in things like light tanks and tank destroyers. But just knowing when somebody can see you is kind of important, and I think that's good. Other things they're thinking about is national perks, so different characteristics for different nationalities. Heroic perks, so particular crews that could have particular, I don't know, characteristics. I don't know what they could be. Maybe the ability to go balls deep and to suddenly go berserker. Maybe berserker. How about that? Berserker crews. That would be kind of fun. It could be good for the Swedish tanks anyway. So yeah, lots of they're going to be looking at this. They don't say that they're going to do it this year, but they will be testing it this year. So and they're probably, what they'll do is go part of the way, so they'll have a sort of interim change and then a later change that changes everything together. So they're also looking at changing or allowing people to change their nationality of crews. So if you've got a German crew and you want to retrain it as a French crew, you have to insert garlic into every orifice going, but you'd also cost you gold and a lot of silver to do it. But that will come later. Other things they've talked about is people who've accidentally changed or when you get these free girl crews, they've accidentally changed them to one particular thing and they want to change it back to another nationality. So they're thinking about allowing people to retrain girl crews, but only once. So watch this space for that. Now, one of the interesting things in the run-up to well, over Christmas time, I think it was, there was talk by one of the developers that the girls that you got at New Year would be ideal to go into the Italian premium tank when that comes into the game. You've seen it's on the test server now being super tested, but this Q&A said that they will not be around long enough to put them into Italian tanks. So if you are like me, holding on to your girls in the hope that you can put them in the Italian tank when it arrives, I'm going to have to do something else, because this is what this Q&A is saying, that they will not be available when that tank comes in the game, which is a real shame. It does tend to suggest that that premium tank will not arrive before the new patch. It'll come with the new patch probably, which is when the girls are no longer available. So if you've got those girls in the garage, use them. That's what you need to do. Let's have a look. I think that's the main stuff on this section of Q&A. So team killing and idiots, and how stupid they're doing stupid things to basically stop their teammates doing well, like blocking or pushing. This was addressed in the Q&A as well, and Wargaming said that they are thinking about introducing an email address where you can send replays for something like this, and if that if it's deemed to have been, you know, particularly nasty offence, or presumably if it's a repeat offence, then it could be that players get banned. I don't know. It seems to be a little bit unlikely, shall we say, that this will actually happen, even if there is email address. I mean, you've got a report button now. I don't know anybody who has been had any kind of ramifications taken against them for anything they've done in the game, and then they've been reported. It just doesn't happen. So what's the chances of an email? And we know that you'll get all those little crybabies the moment, you know, somebody steals their kill or jogs them as they're about to fire, or what have you, just particularly hates the tank because they happen to one-shot them. They'll be banging in the copies of the games to this email account. It will be you'll need a full-time crew of about 50 people just to monitor it. I just can't see that happening, but hey, something's got to happen to it, and they need some system, and they are talking about, you know, particularly how they promote fair play. So we'll see what happens on this score. Somebody asked, will the chats return? So the fact, again, for the newer players, you used to have a chat system that allowed you to talk to the enemy team, so you could see everything. That was taken away because, frankly, it was just so much abuse being thrown around. And I mean, it's bad enough in your own teams, but when it's the enemy team and they're all bitching about the fact they've been one-shotted, or somebody's using auto-aim because how could they possibly have been killed any other way, it just is horrible. So, but they've said no, they're not going to bring back chat again, which is great. Now mods, particularly given the fact there's been another load of bans apparently this week for bad mods. So they're talking about they're going to continue with the process of implementing a number of the more popular mods into the game. Things like in-game session stacks, zoom outs, setting the default for your sniping thing, those kind of things they're talking about bringing into the game over time. So that is good. We also obviously have the mod hub now, which is where you can go and download sort of authorized mods, and that's a good feature, I think, because presumably there is some kind of checking of those by Wargaming to allow them to be there. Although, interesting, I'm on a number of Facebook pages for World of Tanks. I certainly wouldn't recommend that. If there are just, you think they're toxic in the game, there's some complete twat heads on the Facebook pages. Anyway, but there was actually a girl who was saying that she got banned, and she said she used Aslan's mods from Aslan, I think she said she got them from the hub, and that was the only mod she uses. So obviously there was something within. I mean, I think Aslan's package does have a couple of mods that are not allowed, and if you happen to download and select the wrong ones, then potentially you could be banned, and this girl apparently was for a week. So bit concerning really. So I hoped that anything that goes on their hub would actually be checked and approved. Now there's a bit of common sense. I think in her case she was using the one that there's a version which shows you, I think, where sensitive parts of tanks are. That you can have it in two ways. You can have it in the garage, so you can see where your ammo rack is on your tank and blah blah blah, which is allowed, but you're not allowed to play it in the game. So you have to use the setting which is only garage. And I think maybe she was using it, I don't know, maybe she was using it in game, which is definitely an illegal mod. You're not allowed to know where to shoot a tank and to hit its ammo rack, for instance, or its fuel tank. You've got to learn that, and you've got to get experience with it. So anyway, that's by the by. So next thing, personal missions. New set of personal missions. They want to bring them in October, so a second set of missions, but there's some question mark whether it will be ready in October, but certainly they are working on another set of personal missions, which is great. And for anybody who's concerned, they will match up. They still will run alongside the first set of missions. So if you haven't finished the first set of missions, they won't be going away. They'll still be there. So it just means there's another set of options basically. I'm on the full set of missions. I'm on the object, the final personal missions, and I'm stuck. I do one every blue moon, once in a blue moon, because they are so damn hard, which is frustrating because I would love to do some more. They're a good way of generating extra credits and extra bonuses of various types. So a new set of missions would be great. Presumably you'll have to select them, so it means you can't keep mission 1 running while mission 2 are running, but either way I think it's a good thing. Question mark whether the RNG system at the moment, you've got plus or minus 25% RNG in the game, whether that's going to be changed. They said no. None of this is particularly talk about the Wargaming League. There will be more fun events this year. I guess the obvious one that will come up is the Football World Cup, because that is in Russia, isn't it? So I'd imagine they'll be doing something around the Football World Cup. Last time they had a football tournament, we had that three-a-side tank football game, which was kind of fun. Just a bit different. They're looking at what to do about what they call turbo battles, so matches where it's all over within 3 minutes, you know, where one team absolutely stomps the other team, and what to do about that, because it's not much fun if you're on the receiving end of that, because we know it's like an avalanche. Once your team's 5 or 6 tanks down, and the enemy team is just sort of running rings around everything that's left, it's impossible to stop that landslide. It really is. There's no tank, I don't think, in the game that can stop that kind of thing happening. So they're looking at what they can do. I don't really know what they can do. I think it's the nature of games like this, that will happen to some degree. But Super Conqueror, they're looking at that at the moment because they're worried that it might be too good. We'll see. Same with the Object 268 version 4, the new tier 10 Russian tank destroyer. Now to me that thing is ridiculously strong. Not so much in its own tier, but if it ever comes up against tier 8s, they can't do a thing to it. It's just ridiculous. So I think that's all wrong. That should never, that to me strikes me as a tank that was not properly checked and not properly tested before they brought it into the game. Let's see. I'm not going to go on about this. Artillery, they again the usual complainers about, oh, it's still too powerful. They're going to be quite happy with artillery as it stands at the moment. Things are not going to change, although they are saying that the M44, which is I think is tier 6 American artillery, they're a bit worried about that, so that might need a little bit of balancing. I presume downwards, because I think it's quite powerful. Looking at this is a good one. Perhaps they should increase repair costs for players who self-drown, and they're saying that's a possibility. I don't know. Also, what about a new skill that allows you to deal with stun better? So you could have your type 5 heavy or something, and you put a crew skill on it that means they are more able to deal with stun, shall we say, so it has less impact. That's another interesting idea, which they will take away. I think that's probably it. Loot boxes that like they had at Christmas, they're not going to be brought in permanently, unlike many other games, which is great, but they'll bring them in for special occasions, which I think is the right balance to have it. They are planning a PvE, so this is a good thing. I'm really excited about this. So Armoured Warfare's had it for a long time and is actually quite a good system. So this is you playing against bots, and before you snigger in the back there saying all your games are against bots, this is against genuine programmed bots. Now it doesn't mention it here, but I've read it somewhere else that there's a suggestion that they may actually use this as the basis of a historic mode, so you could play, you know, your Tiger against hordes of Russian T-34s, and it would be something more historic in terms of nature, and I think that would be really cool. I'd be up for that, definitely. The problem, as I've addressed before now with the historic mode that used to be in the game, was that nobody wanted to play it. They all wanted to play certain tanks, and because you had to have a good balance of tanks, it just the wait times got crazy, and eventually everyone gave up playing it. So playing against bots, I think is the way to go. There's the Type 5 is not being changed, which is great, because it's fine. Statistically, it's fine. Perfect curves from bad to good players. There you go. Let's see what else they got here. Flipping tanks. So not as in these flipping tanks, but tanks you flip over. There was a suggestion that maybe your repair kit could allow you to flip back over. And that's kind of an interesting option, because, you know, if you do turn over and then, you know, your teammate comes and tries to turn you back over, they're causing team damage when they're doing it, and they can actually get banned for doing it. They can go blue for trying to turn you back over. Plus, if they do it completely wrong, they might actually destroy you, and then they definitely will get a team kill against them. So they don't like the idea, though, of having the repair, but they're going to be looking at how they do something about flipping. Now, I have noticed, I don't know if it's just me lately, but a couple of times recently I've nearly turned a tank over, and it seems to have bounced back onto its tracks, sometimes with a bit of damage, sometimes not. So I feel like they've done something, but we'll see. Here we go. Historic battles only as PvE. Yeah, that's okay. Further down, Wargaming has plans to finally buff the clan war. Has some plans to buff clan wars, and personal mission tanks will also be looked at. So hold on to your personal mission tanks. I see people on the Facebook page talking about, should I sell this personal mission tank because it's rubbish. And I'm thinking, you'll never get it again. Why would you do it? Yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably about it. Well, I think about, would they allow ranked battles of 8s and 9s, and they're thinking about it is the answer. So I think that's a possibility, so that's good. That's good. So there you go. Really interesting stuff. I think you'll agree. Some very good ideas, some not so good ideas. Actually, no, I think they're all pretty reasonable ideas. It just remains to be seen how they are actually implemented into the game. But as ever, let me know in the comments down below what you think. So the ban hammer is back out in force again. More accounts being banned and permanently banned for illegal mod usage. In the EU, 4,056 accounts have a week ban and 490 permanently banned. North America 802 and 116. Russia 60,000 banned for a week, and 5,000 plus banned forever. And Asia 96 for a week and 15 forever. So illegal mods are still out there, people are still using them, and Wargaming are still trying to clean it up. And you know, that's got to be applauded, I guess. Well, not I guess, it has to be applauded, and it's a good thing. I still think, you know, they've got the mod hub now. Why don't they just double check that everything on there is legal, and say those are the only ones you're allowed, and if we detect anybody using any other mods in the game, you will be banned, or the game will not run. I think that would be a far better way to do it, but you know, good that they're looking into it. And fair dinkum for sorting it out. Make it clean, make the game clean. That's so on the EU server at least, there's a special mission thing running through March. They're calling it the countdown to 1.0. Lots and lots of stuff you can win, which is kind of good. Garage slots, rations, what else we got here? They're saying the main prize is worth 1.5 million credits, and the missions are pretty easy, so it's a daily mission thing. I don't know how many you need to... Oh, here we go. So week 1 you need to collect 5 different tokens, and I believe if you do the veteran one you automatically get the private one as well. But they're pretty easy. Here was the first day, you just had to take part in a game, and then they play 5 games was another one, and 4,000 XP, whatever. So good to see. I love these sort of day missions. It makes me want to get on the play a few games, although it can be quite frustrating when you've got a lot to earn before, you know, if you've only got half an hour to play or an hour to play, and you've got to get, I don't know, 5 wins or something, and sometimes we know how hard that can be with teams that are out there. But nice to see that. So watch out for the personal missions, or the missions that are running at the moment. Free goodies. So a sneak preview of what to expect through March on the EU server. So top of the tree is the new Object 430U Soviet Tier 10 medium tank. So as ever, bonuses for crews and discounts on all the tanks in that line, which is kind of useful if you're grinding your way down that. We've also got the mission countdown to 1.0, so between the 1st and the 25th of March is a daily mission. Does that mean the new patch comes in on the 25th of March? We will have to see. No doubt they still haven't said when the new patch comes in, so but the fact that's countdown to it and it's 1st to the 25th, could it be the 25th or 26th? XP Fever, so this weekend 3rd to the 5th, extra XP, various dedicated missions and discounts to get more XP for your crew, which is always good. 10th to the 12th, times 3 for your first victory of the day, and again various missions. 17th and 19th is St. Patrick's Day. Again, I think like last year's, there's a chance to win the 4-leaf clover emblem to put on your tanks, so nice to have. 24th to 26th of March, credit chests, and times 3 for your first victory. And then the 31st to the 2nd is a weekend special with times 2 crew experience per game. So again, that would tend to suggest that maybe that's when the new patch comes in, because people might want to be retraining crews. So there's your look at what's happening on the EU server through March. And so for North America, the March overview looks like this. You've got K9 special missions between the 10th and the 14th. Celebrating the K9 contribution to war. So discounts on the Walker Bulldog, special missions that were for extra XP and consumables, and the MUTs and so forth. So there you go. The MUTs goes on sale on the 1st, so that was yesterday. Premium tank sales, so 1st to the 14th is the MUTs, 8th to the 19th is the Malbacher, 15th to 26th the T92 light tank, 22nd to the 9th is the new premium vehicle, Speculation, this is when the Italian auto-loading medium comes in. No confirmation yet, but that's possible. And then the 29th, the 4th, is the Tiger 131 and the Tog 2, which both featured surprisingly highly in my top 5 damage dealers at tier 6 heavies, which surprised me, particularly the Tog surprised me. Anyway, so that's your premiums. Special sales, so various offers on personal reserves, premiums, super boxes, etc. through the month. I won't go into details there. Special mission events, you've got this weekend supply raid missions plus times 2 XP weekend. 17th to 21st you've got St. Patrick's Day missions and chance to win the 4-leaf clover. 23rd to the 26th of March is a supply raid mission and times 3 XP weekend, and the 30th to the 2nd is again supply raid missions and times 2 crew experience for the weekend. So that's all cool. On track, top tier vehicles that get you basically get extra XP, and I think the vehicles are cheaper as well to buy in the line. So second to the 16th is the Leopard 1 German medium. 16th to the 30th is T-57 heavy tank, the American autoloader, and 30th to the 13th is the Object 268 Russian. Weekly deals, again, lots of those happening, lots of tank. I keep saying this, it'd be so nice. I love the fact in North America, if you get an ace tanker game in one of the tanks that is in the mastery list that week, you get a special emblem. In fact, you get 3 special emblems. So if you're playing the looks between March the 23rd and April the 2nd and you ace it, you get a special badge, which I kind of like. I think that's really cool, but it seems to be only North America does that. So there you go. Anyway, that's your mark. So I hope you found that useful and interesting. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And let me know in the comments down below, please, what you think about some of these suggestions, some of these proposed changes. Are you excited, disappointed, scared, silly? Don't give a damn. Just let me know. I know people are very, very forthcoming with their views, and it's great to see what people are thinking, whether I'm aligned with them or not. Anyway, enjoy your games, have fun, try not to take it too seriously. Just remember, it is a damn game, and I'll see you again soon. This is Gamer Dom, signing out.